Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. As I think you could tell early on, I'm incredibly enthusiastic about talking about The Kingdom Began in Puerto Rico with this gentleman, Angel Garcia. He's the author. He's also executive director of South Bronx People for Change, which is a church-based organization co-founded by Father Neil Connolly, who's the subject of the book. Angel, nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Nice to be with you. I was the executive director,
Oh,
now
okay.
doing other good things, but was very proud and very happy to be there.
There is so much here to talk about the book. What was the story that you felt needed to, like when you said, and you told me it took you 8 years when you
Mhm.
started this project? What was the germ of the story that you said has to be told?
Thank you. Essentially, I thought that there was a story about this man's journey through 27 years in this place that became known as the South Bronx, the most famous urban area in the United States, for unfortunately some of the wrong reasons. Everyone understands it as the place where the fires and the demolition took place, looked like Berlin after the war, etc. But I thought that I experienced it personally, that there were people who fought for good, decent living conditions in all of the areas of the South Bronx. And people needed to understand that. And I figured I would start with this man, Father Neil Connolly. He was going to be one chapter in a book. There he is at St. Mary's Parish. And I thought he was going to be the one chapter in the book. Once I started interviewing him in 2012, I realized this is going to be a whole book. He has a whole number of extraordinary stories. And as people evaluated the book for me, read versions of the book, I realized I needed to give a real context for what was going on in the South Bronx, in New York City, and in the church, because they all influenced the journey that he went through.
I think what is not fully understood by in this story that you're laying out for us, what is not fully understood is the passion and connection that Puerto Rican people have for their faith, and
Yes.
it carries them through. I think many people who just assume left and right and blue and red would
Hmm.
assume that Puerto Rican people, who are interested in immigration and everything else, would be liberal, so to speak. I hate
Hmm.
using these labels, but that
Right.
is
Sure.
what they would be. But there are many, many, many who their faith drives them and makes them much more conservative financially, and of course, much more conservative morally. Talk to me, if you will, about the connection between Puerto Rican people who came to New York City and
Hmm.
the Bronx, and what those churches meant to them, and why a figure like Father Connolly was so immense.
Right. Sure. Well, he went to visit them first, and that's sort of what the title is about. That he, excuse me, he got to understand their version of faith as he went to visit them and provided the sacraments in their form in the campos in Puerto Rico. So he came to them and as part of a church program, and therefore, when he came to the South Bronx, in a large, very large Puerto Rican neighborhood in Hunts Point, Longwood, he appreciated who they were and he appreciated where they came from to come to this point as part of this great migration, 750,000 who came to New York City after the Second World War. And he was committed to helping them with their faith formation. And so thousands of people were coming to Mass on Sunday at St. Athanasius as a result of his connection to them. And he made sure that, as did many other parishes that were starting to take in Puerto Ricans in the city, that there were societies, Santo Nombre, Sagrado Corazon, all of these societies that had their English language versions were in Spanish. That the masses were once the global church said you could say mass in the language of the people. They were saying the language in the mass of in the language of the people. And they were reaching people even in corners of the neighborhood that seemed to be unreachable, like Hunts Point Peninsula, where he worked with the Puerto Rican people there to set up a community center and a parish, a chapel that was led by them, that they had control over.
They had ownership of. One of the most incredible images in the book is the picture of the rubble around the church.
Yes.
And this is a startling image to me, and and the same with all the images that come out of the book, and it underscores for me the notion that all of these things, the church, the neighborhood, the things that were going on, were connected in a way.
Right.
In that people, of course, they go to church, they look to their faith when things happen, like it burns down. And I love that first image that we saw of the rubble, but the church is what stood strong. What was the image, what was the home, which was the place to solve our problems. So
right. Well, I just want to, one thing to the homes of people also became essentially the second level of the parish for them, because when things got really tough financially in the parish, they relied on the parishioners to feed them. The priests relied on the parishioners to feed them. They had that much faith in the people, and the people had built that much of a relationship that they worked out a commitment. They asked for it from the pulpit. They said, things are really tough, and we really need you to help us out. We would like to be able to eat in your homes because we cannot afford to cook.
Wow.
And the people responded because they knew that this was their priest. Not a single one of them was a Puerto Rican priest, mind you. You had an Irishman, an Italian, and several other Irishmen and Italians who spoke the language and understood their customs.
This brings up two things. One, the main thing I really want to focus on is what you told us earlier, that you had not thought about doing the whole book about Father Connolly, but he became such an important figure. What he did, an Irish Catholic pastor,
right?
I don't want to say adopted the community, but said, if I'm going to do God's work, so to speak, if I'm going to serve this community, I've got to do this. And that was learn the language, and turn the church into something more than just a place that people came to pray and, bare their souls and all that. And that connection of the church being an influencer in neighborhoods is something that endures not only in Puerto Ricans, frankly, but in many Bronx people today.
Right. And as a matter of fact, the church, they had always had this approach that they needed to reach out to the church. One of the first scenes is him looking to deliver last rites to someone who had passed away in one of the buildings. And so they made a regular point of visiting people in their buildings. As I said, they went also to people to feed them. And they actually even held masses and Bible discussions in people's homes. So all of the homes and the streets themselves became the church. And that was influenced by the great event in the world, in Rome, in the 1960s, the Second Vatican Council, which said to the church, you must be a church of the people, and you must be a church in the world, bringing the world to a state of justice, equality, and dignity for all humankind. That was the Second Vatican Council, and that taught him how to reshape his mission.
In a society that had burned down people's homes and buildings and neighborhoods, and where people felt like, we're not getting it. We're not getting it from anywhere else. All of a sudden, here's a figure that is going to, that's a way we can get it. That's a way we can band together. And so the church then continued to emerge in importance.
Yes.
One thing that I was very surprised to find that he only was the pastor of the church from 1976 to 81. somehow I assumed that, it's considering the complexity of the tome.
Yes,
I just assumed that, this was the legacy of him in this particular church, but
right.
no, he had been elsewhere, and it was really this incredible 5 years, emerging from the fires in 1976, until 1981.
Yes. As a matter of fact,
We
what
got about
happened?
a minute for you, so
Sure.
believe
Right.
me, we could talk a long time about this.
Yeah. Well, it's the fact that he became vicar of the South Bronx, and that he and many other priests and sisters and laypersons who saw a vision for what the South Bronx could be,
I
as a
love that.
unified church, what they called the South Bronx Area Church. They created two organizations that sought to empower people, sought to bring lay people to leadership positions in the church and in the world. Because Neil Connolly's life and the church's life, with many of the other priests and sisters, Father Jerry Ryan, Father Peter Gavigan, Father John Flynn, Sister Louise Molesky, Sister Valerie Lordy, and many others, was to be in the world and to develop the people.
Father
Because
Louis
long term,
Gigante, I'm surprised you didn't mention Father Gigante in that list.
well, Father Gigante and Father Connolly were buds, were
I
best buds
understand.
throughout all that
Listen,
time in St. Athanasius.
we got to run.
Sure.
What's next? How do you see this playing in the long run? Take just a few seconds, or you're going to let this ride and
Right.
see how people react to it.
I would love to see this. Obviously, I'd love for people to read the book. You can acquire it at the library, or you can acquire it through Fordham University Press. I want people to take the mission that they need to develop people power and organize in the South Bronx and in the rest of the Bronx, as many of them are already doing. The Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition, Mothers on the Move, various
We got
other.
to run. There's 1,200. Some have estimated up to 2,000 not-for-profits in the Bronx.
Mhm.
Boy, I hear it every week. We speak the same language, and what can I tell you? I mean, this is a central, and I'm not talking geographically, a central Bronx story about the South Bronx. Angel Garcia, congratulations on this work.
Thank you very
It's a
much. And thank you for
tremendous
this
work.
opportunity to talk
Oh,
about it.
sure. It's a tremendous work. It's a tremendous piece. And what I'm thrilled about is now we have another friend who can talk to us about the real life in the South Bronx when we need it.
And
And
I can be reached, people can reach out to me, and I'm very happy to talk about
great,
it with them as well.
great.
Good
Angel
talking to you,
Garcia,
Gary.
great. Thank you. Angel Garcia. And the book is The Kingdom Began in Puerto Rico. We also thank Annie McDonough for joining us. And, every single week we're talking about the Bronx. We're buzzing about the Bronx on the Bronx Buzz. Good.